We have a question that was submitted by Brad Gillette from BSC. When the wind of change blows, some people build walls, others build windmills. So thank you for that. That was a pretty interesting statement. Kelly, you centered your life around this idea of teaching improv and this idea of kind of making the best of a bad situation. Yes, and writing your own story and being part of that future. In this climate where people are seeking to become more responsive to this change, what are some of the core skills that you think about that people could embrace to put, their thoughts into action?
Well, first of all, in improvisation, you have to see all obstacles as gifts. So the ability to make mistakes work for you, that's huge. And the other thing is you're not doing it alone. I think we've all heard that phrase, your team is only as good as its weakest member. In improvisation, we say that that's not the case. The reality is your team is only as good as its ability to compensate for its weakest member, because one of us is going to be the weakest member at some point, and I'd rather be pulled up by my group than ostracized by my group. And this is the reckoning we live in right now with so many things. I mean, have you left the house recently? I mean, it's like, COVID over. I mean, so we have a responsibility to each other, to care for each other, to protect for each other, to be kind, to be responsible, also to educate. That's a huge one. So we have to have the knowledge. I mean, it's kindness without wisdom doesn't get you as far as you need to go. So I think, taking the spirit of great improvisers, you have to put yourself out there. You have to make your partner look good.
Kelly, you're an inspiration. Let me ask you this. Somebody in the audience, Robert Snyder, asked this question for you.
Yeah.
So I want to get your perspective. You published a book, 2015, called Yes and. What new things have you learned that you didn't or that you couldn't, and now that may inspire the sequel? Give us your thought.
Yeah. So I've outlined the sequel, and I actually outlined the sequel before Nora got sick. And my editor said, all this information is great, but you don't have a story. So I do have a story now, and the story is also tied to the science work that we did. Because when we first went up to the University of Chicago, we did the yes and exercise for them that we teach people, this idea around affirming and contributing in order to explore and heighten, which is what yes and is. And they said, that's great, we got a bunch of research that can support that, but what happens when you are in serious disagreement? You can't yes and the idea across from you. What do you do then? And we're like, we don't know, and they didn't know. So we went across, they went and looked at the research, and we went and started improvising. And when we came together, we actually discovered this sort of fourth pillar of yes and, which is called thank you because. And the idea is if you're in a conversation with someone that you need to stay in that conversation, it's difficult and you don't agree, the way you stay in is by thanking someone for the opinion they just shared, even if you don't agree with it. And the because is crucial. The because is finding some point of agreement, however small. And so, my daughter had friends whose parents were anti-vaxxers. And this was a problem, and but I like them and they love us. And, so we needed to stay in this conversation. I remember saying, thank you for sharing that, because you love your girl so much. You don't want to see her get hurt by these vaccines. I feel the same way, and I don't want to have my girl get hurt. So I think in the times we're living in, especially right now when we're blocking and we're canceling at will, and not saying that the fight isn't right in there, but again, we're not going to do it by being completely separate. And thank you because at least gives you an orientation to keep the conversation going.